Thank you, everyone. So thank you for your attendance. I'm glad there's still a few people here at 20 past 4 on a pretty big day, to be honest. Big day for us. So my name's Jem Richards. I'm the CTO of REDBEAR IT. REDBEAR IT is just a very brief background. We're a cloud services organization, AWS consulting partner. We've been working with AWS for about 6 years. We have a managed service practice. We do a lot of the standard consulting bits and pieces that other organizations do, but our specialization is really very much around that cloud security. We built the managed service for a customer who asked us to do it. We've done a lot of work with financial services, and security became a very important part for that customer and an important part to the actual solution we provide to our customers. So today I just wanted to talk about what we're seeing in the kind of threat landscape, and then talk about what we call the 3 pillars of modern security and why cloud security is not the same as on-premises security and why it's very different. And then talk about some of the techniques that we actually use to address those 3 pillars. So let's get moving. We're using some data here from our primary sources, an organization called Rapid7, who are a great security organization. They produce some great products, and they do a lot of research. And we like them because they're very rich in their research, and they tell you all about their methods, and they're very open. They don't try to be like, hey, this is really scary, quick, buy some product. They're really open, they're a great product. So it's just going to start and talk about what they call their National Exposure Index. And here's the top 10. So these are the countries that are rated as the most exposed. So the United States, in this data and this survey, would be the most exposed country in the world. Now, as Australia, we're kind of small in the world scale. We're on the edge of the world. But we do like to punch above our weight. Right? We do like to think that, we're kind of bigger than we are. So where do you think Australia stands? 100? Top 100? There's 230 odd countries in the world last time I checked. Anybody got a guess? Well, the answer actually is number 11. So well done, Australia. We may be like the 70th largest country in the world, but we're the 11th most exposed country in the world. So that's not a great place to be, but it's not all doom and gloom. Who thinks database is the crown jewels of their organization? That's where we keep our customer data. That's where we keep our business data. It's really amazing. There are now, on the internet, 13 million databases that are actually exposed publicly on the internet. This is scary stuff, right? So you should really be thinking about, wow, do any of my databases have that exposure? Because this stuff should be deep in your environment, You should not be doing this kind of stuff. I just wanted to throw that one out because I was really shocked when I saw that. So what about the threats that we see out there? Surely it's vulnerabilities in software, right? Well, the answer is no. The most common way that people get in is through weak passwords, through default passwords, through phishing attacks. That is by far and away the most way that people actually get into threats and get into organizations, And when you look at vulnerabilities, because that's probably the most common way that people would expect, most hackers who are out there only have access to the same information that we have and that the vendors have. So they hear about a vulnerability when the vendor announces it and they announce a patch, and we know about it, and if we patch, we're covered, right? But that's really kind of scary, that suspicious login. So how do we detect that kind of stuff? That's actually quite difficult, and that's really where cloud can give us some fantastic advantages over what we do on premises. So. And the direct result of that is when you look at how long it takes the average organization to detect a threat today, it's around about 92 days. 92 days. So any of your organizations who are subject to GDPR has a 72-hour mandatory reporting window. Last time I did maths, 92 days didn't fit into 72 hours. So I don't know if anybody heard about British Airways this week. They announced that their booking system was hacked, and it took them 2 weeks to detect that. Now, British Airways are in the UK, part of the EU at the moment, subject to GDPR. It turns out somebody had installed some kind of malware, and they were scraping transactions that are going through that booking system, getting the credit card details, and it was going off somewhere. In theory, they could be up for a 480 million euro fine if the EU play by the letter of the law. So you don't want to be that company, right? And the reason this kind of window happens, this kind of 92-day period happens, is because we're seeing a lot of that people getting a password, people getting some kind of credentials, and they're coming in and they're quietly sniffing around and doing some reconnaissance, trying to get elevated privileges. That kind of stuff is hard to detect. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques that you can use to detect that stuff. So. But of course, this is all kind of scary stuff, but we're all paying attention, and we're all really, we're on top of our visibility of our cloud environments, right? Yeah? Well, according to this, everybody thinks visibility in the cloud is really important. Nobody says, oh, I don't care, I'm not that bothered. Yet, only 11% of people say they do it to any kind of level of what they might call satisfactory, let alone do it well. So there's a massive gap there between what we perceive our environment should do and what they're actually doing. So what can we do about that? So let's just start by talking a little bit about why cloud security is different to on-premises security. So the cloud, as we all know, is a dynamic environment. So this is Albert Einstein. I'm sure most of you would recognize Albert Einstein. He said many great things. The one I particularly like that's relevant is we can't solve problems using the same thinking that we used to create the problems in the first place. So when we talk about cloud, we're talking about borderless environments, we're talking about dynamic worlds, we're talking about non-static. We don't have a cartography of our environment anymore that we can point out and say, here's all my pieces where people can get in. We don't have that because the time we've had this conversation today, your environment has changed. It's very different, okay? So the cloud world and the way you operate cloud is very, very different. And that certainly applies to security. I like to think of when you're doing security as on-premises is you're operating a train line. We're moving people from A to B, and the trains go from one station to the other, and they go on tracks that we have, and we see, and we can define, and there's no other way they can go. When you're dealing with cloud, we're talking about airlines. We're still moving people from A to B, and they still start at one point, in this case an airport, they go to another point, an airport, and we think they're going to go a certain way, but because of factors you don't control, such as weather and air traffic control and maintenance issues, they might go a different way. So cloud is very different, and we really have to think about security in the cloud in a different way. So the three pillars that we like to talk about in terms of what we call modern security, first one is visibility. If you can't see it, you can't measure it. So you've got to have visibility of your environments. The second one is analytics. The actual threat landscape out there is huge nowadays. And as we start to adopt cloud, and as we start to use particularly multi-cloud and SaaS, our attack surface gets larger. So how do we deal with that huge amount of data? How do we actually find information that's relevant to us? And the third one is automation. So again, you're going to see a lot of stuff. You're going to see a lot of threats. How do I deal with that? Do I want to go and employ a room full of people or a floor full of people, or in fact, everyone in this conference? Or do I want to get smarter than that? And I think we all know the answer to that. So let's look at those in a bit more detail. So when I talk about visibility, what do I mean? Really talking about opening up the box, unpeeling that onion. So we're talking about how can we see what's going on in our environment from a holistic point of view. So we're not talking just AWS. We're not talking just your application. We're not talking just your network. We're talking all of those things. Let's bring all that together. And it can also include business data. So we did some work with a customer who's actually an e-commerce customer. And they were interested particularly in some threats at the business level. And one of the use cases that we implemented for them from a visibility point of view was when a customer makes multiple purchases and they're actually sending them to a single location, a single shipping address, but it's coming from multiple billing addresses. And what they've done is they compromised a whole bunch of credit cards, and they've then shipped all those goods for whatever reason. So that was the use case they had. So when we're talking about visibility, it's that how can we go from that kind of siloed view of the world, where we've got a thin slice of data, how can we bring all that together? So visibility, and there's a whole bunch of tools out there, is about having that end-to-end view, having that holistic view, really. And we use a particular tool called Sumo Logic. If you're just using AWS, then you can use CloudWatch, for example. You can use the native tools, and there's a bunch of other tools that you can actually use to do that. So visibility is absolutely critical. After all, as I said before, if you can't see it, you can't measure it, right? And if you can't see it, you can't control it. So visibility is absolutely fundamental. If you don't do anything else from a cloud security point of view, make sure you've got that visibility of those environments. So when you've got that visibility, when you can see what's going on, how do you work out what's actually important to your organization? So, and analytics is the way you can actually pick through that data. So that, when you talk about modern cloud security, that's not looking for events anymore. So we're not talking about looking for a particular event or a particular string from a firewall log or from an application log. What we're really talking about nowadays is that user behavior analytics. So when we went back and talked about those 92 days before a breach gets detected, when we're talking about someone gaining credentials and doing reconnaissance, analytics is the way that we can actually detect that. So that user behavior. So when we've got an environment where users behave in a certain way, when that behavior changes, that may be a security event that we're interested in. We did a piece of work for an organization who's, they've got many entry points into their organization, and their workforce is very dynamic and fluid. And they were concerned actually about ransomware and the potential for ransomware. So we put a solution in for them based on access to the file system and access to their file servers. And so that when a user maybe looked at 500 or 1,000 files in a day, suddenly if they were looking at 25,000, 50,000, that was of interest to them. Was there a bot on an end user device? So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about with analytics. It's really finding those needles in the haystack. What's the alerts that I actually need to do something about? What are the actionable alerts that are going to work for me? And that's what analytics is all about. And then once you've got that, your visibility, you're starting to do analytics and really starting to work out what's important to my organization. How do I then do something about that? Does that mean I need 20, 30, 50, 100 people to react to those? If you're doing repeatable tasks, then automation is your friend. So we use automation in many, many ways. So we have some customers where we use things like some of the AWS services such as guard duty, some of the threat intel that comes out of that. And if we get any hint that there's an EC2 instance, for example, behaving in a way it's never behaved before, we quarantine that instance and we replace it. And that's all automated. We'll get a notification about it, and when one of the team comes in the morning, they'll do forensics. But we don't get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, some of our customers are not ready for that. They don't want to give the keys to Skynet, all right? They want to say, you know what? Tell me about it, I'll deal with it. But I can guarantee once they've done that 3 or 4 times at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they've done the same remediation step, they're going to let the machine do it for you. So this is really how you scale, right? This is what AWS does, okay? This is how you really scale your security response. So automation is absolutely your friend in this space. So a lot to be gained from that. And when we talked about that British Airways incident, we talked about that earlier on, the analytics piece that I talked about before, and that user behavior analytics, that would have detected that. So suddenly there's the web service sending data over here. It's never done that before. Why is it doing that? And then you could have an automated response. It just replaced those devices and then dropped in a fresh response, a fresh, clean image on top of that. So, I don't know what British Airways do in their security world, but certainly there are modern techniques that they could be using that would have helped them, for sure. So what does AWS do in this space, and what are some of the tools that you can use? So fundamental to any kind of security work in AWS is understanding the shared responsibility model. Now, the beauty of that is when you look at the controls that you have to implement as part of being secure and putting workloads into AWS take care of a lot of those security models. When you're using AWS, you gain the value of the investment AWS make in security every year. They've got deeper pockets than you and I will ever have, and you or I will ever have. So when you go to AWS, you gain that. Where your responsibility comes in is what you do with your data, is what you do with your applications that sit on top of that. And that's where that visibility comes in. And that's where the tooling that, I'll talk about in a minute comes in. But don't forget the shared responsibility model. Don't forget what that actually brings you. So it's very important. So what are some of the tools that we use from an AWS space and some of our ecosystem partners? So from a visibility point of view, CloudWatch is obviously fundamental, really. It gives you insights into everything, VPC flow logs. You can put it into applications. You can pull data from everywhere. Guard Duty is a fantastic tool. It's fairly new. I don't know if anyone's used it here. Really, really fantastic tool. It's managed threat intel in the cloud. Turn it on. Anybody who uses CloudFormation, I hope you all do for automation. You can enable Guard Duty with a 7-line CloudFormation template. And it will take you about 2 minutes to write it if you make a coffee at the same time. So simple, turn it on, and then suck the data out of it, and create events and create alerts out of it. So, and we use tools to help us with that oversight. We use Sumo Logic, for example, and we pull a lot of the data out of AWS into Sumo Logic. We pull application data. We pull data from on-premises environments. We pull data out of Office 365. Anywhere there's an API, anywhere you can pull files, anywhere you can install a collection agent, you can pull that data. We use Rapid7 for things like vulnerability testing ongoing, because again, when you're in cloud and when you're in that dynamic world, we're talking about, just being able to do this stuff continuously and automate it. We don't just do penetrations once a year anymore. We don't do them penetration testing a week before go live anymore. We're doing it all the time, and we pull back the results and we learn from it. From an auditability point of view, CloudTrail. Please, I hope everyone uses CloudTrail. Actually, the latest data tells me that 56% of AWS customers have CloudTrail enabled. Everyone else should have it enabled. This is where I put my little geeky hat on. It's absolutely my favorite tool because it logs everything, and you can keep those logs forever, and you can suck them into all sorts of tools and pull out some very interesting insights. Talk about user behavior analytics. You can see when someone's use of AWS has suddenly gone from, I do a few things, to, whoa, what's going on? They're suddenly doing thousands of different services, thousands of different transactions a day. Config's a great tool, often overlooked. We use Config with all our customers. We do some automation on that. We've got a customer, for example, who mandates the use of encrypted volumes. So we use Config, whether it's a ruling config, that when somebody creates a volume that's unencrypted, it calls a Lambda function that deletes that volume and sends them a notification with a snippet from the policy saying, your volume was deleted because it wasn't encrypted. Please, next time, create an encrypted volume. So Config automates a lot of that for you. You can put some Lambda behind it. It's a fantastic tool. Controllability, IAM is obviously foundational. You've got to get your IAM right. You've got to get your users right. You've got to get that whole identity and access control right. The beauty of IAM is it's extremely granular, and you can apply it to resources such as EC2 instances. It's not just for people. And KMS, encryption, right? Dance like nobody's watching, encrypt like everyone is. KMS makes it so simple. It's almost free. There's no performance penalty to encrypting. So just encrypt because you can. And don't forget the power of automation from your security point of view. If you build environments and if you manage environments using automation, you can guarantee that you're using a template, you're using a script that you use every time. You can guarantee that when you then build another environment, you're not going to introduce some kind of unknown security event. You may have some fantastic admins who are super hot and understand it, and they can click around the console till you're blue in the face, and they'll do it 100 times, and they can build an environment for you, and they'll do it 101st time, and they'll miss something. Because we all miss things when we do it manually, but you don't need to. People forget how automation is a fantastic security tool. And Lambda, that's a game changer for us, quite frankly. It enabled us to automate a lot of standard tasks, enabled us to trigger automation activities based on events. Lambda's fantastic. And all of that really drives the kind of DevSecOps agenda. And that really is about embedding security into the culture of your organization. So don't think of security as a job for the security guys. Security is everyone's job, right? So if you're writing code, put security tests into your pipeline. Use a tool such as Rapid7 to actually test your code, to test your containers, to test your dependencies before it even gets deployed to your non-production environment. So the idea the way we see it is you build code, you build it securely, you deploy it, you manage it, and we'll watch what you do. And then someone else will watch us as well. Security really has to be part of your culture, of your organization. It's not a job for a small subset. It's everybody's job. And the beauty of the AWS cloud is all the tools are there to make it happen for you. But all that sounds like a lot of work, right? But just get started, okay? We had the old adage, anybody used to work with physical things like measure twice, cut once. It's like, actually, you don't need to do that anymore in AWS. It's a world of two-way doors. You don't make a decision and go, I'm kind of stuck with it. Because you can go, you know what? We didn't get that right. We're now go this way, okay? Get started. Build some visibility. Start pulling in data. And people say, what data should I take? And the answer is as much as you can find, as much as you can afford to do. Start with that. Get some insights, and then you can add some automation. Then you can start really, kind of learning stuff. My daughter, 2 years ago, told me she wanted to climb Everest, and she's 11 now, so she was 9 then. Did I book a ticket to Kathmandu? And did we go and buy a load of gear, and off we went? Nope. Halfway up Everest, we changed our mind. No, we didn't. But what we did is we went bushwalking, we went camping, and we did a bit of rock climbing locally, and we had a lot of fun, and we made some mistakes. We didn't die, I'm glad to say. We learned some stuff, and it was good fun. And will she ever climb Everest? I have no idea. You should behave in the same way your organization. So with security, you will not get everything. You will not cover everything day one, But that doesn't matter, because what you need to do is get started on that journey. So, and the key things for me is really remember those 3 pillars, that visibility, that analytics, that automation, and get started with visibility, and then start to gain insights into what's going on in your organization. And you know what? You can have some fun on the way as well. And there are some really cool tools out there which will make your life easier. So you don't have to build the machine. You just have to feed what's important from your organization into the machine and gain the insights that mean to you. So I think that's it, if this works. It does. There you go. And that was it for me.